Agora. It is wonderful to be with you. I am going to share a presentation here with you about the Well Living Organization and the 10 characteristics. I'm often speak about the 12, but today it's the 10 characteristics of the Well Living Organization. To be able to get to that point, what I'm going to do is to share a little bit of background information from a perspective of legacy and aging, because some of you who may be listening in at this point in time or watching this may still be in an organization, and how might you use these characteristics as a legacy approach to improve focus and strengthen your organization. Or you might find yourself moving out of your organization through something like retirement, or maybe you're an entrepreneur and you're shifting gears and you're doing a major pivot, whatever it might be. Or you find yourself wanting to start something like a charitable organization or a movement, and these well living organization characteristics will be of assistance to you. So, with the Wealth Agora, this is a place for great conversations, dialogue about different topics. And this one I chose today is because on Tuesdays, I post insights and ideas about the Well Living Organization. And what I'm doing is I'm pulling together, about 40 plus years of consulting work and lived experience, having educated around the world, done some consulting work around the world. And I thought that I would bring some of that from my own legacy perspective together and share it and make it available. It's not that I'm going to be diving back into consulting work. I have another area that I want to become more involved with, which is awareness and forests and trees, and being able to bring that to the foreground. It's part of my legacy story, something I've been involved with for many years. But also, this Well Living Organization I know might be of interest to some of you. It's also a way for me to just sort of synthesize a lot of my lived experience. And every once in a while, you'll notice me look over in this direction. This is where my eco-creation and viral creation table is, where I bring all of my ideas together and sketch out my initial notes, and to be able to house all the research that I am doing. So it's sort of one of my favorite places in the house. But today we're going to take a look at this notion of the Well Living Organization, and I'm going to share it through this initial presentation here. And you will find that there's a story that's unfolding here. And the story starts with the sense of legacy. And legacy is about the useful whats that you gift others so that they might learn something from your lived experience. And the useful whats that you're gifting are the resources of your time, effort, and money. And how might you be able to share these with people? Because it's from that lived experience, that use of those useful whats, that people can pick up really great ideas from you. And therefore, this notion of legacy is an important element as a starting place. And when you find yourself in that position of life, you may want to figure out, well, how do I decode this legacy story? And that's one of the books I'm writing. It's a journal, and workbook notebooks are also there to support it. Because what I'm attempting to do is understand what this whole aging process is about, and how we might be able to nurture it, and to be able to bring a lot of fun into it. I sometimes call it simply serious fun, and to bring that to the foreground. Because with this notion of aging, we might use the notion of older person to elder to mentor. And that's a great way in which to be able to share your lived experience, is through being a mentor. And I have lots of information about that as well. And we shoot videos on that on the first and third Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. And so you can certainly tap into that, and you'll find more information in the show more notes, see more notes that are around this video. Now, one of the areas that's really of interest to me now is the whole area of solo aging. And this is in reference to those who are aging, but they don't necessarily have kin and family around them, and they find themselves moving through life by themselves. They may have a friend or something, but they don't have deep relationships with what we would call family, kin. And I know I'm one of those. Both my parents have transitioned. My sister lives a long way away. And so I'm sort of walking and moving through life very much on my own terms, doing what I do. And I sort of think of it as solo aging. And this notion of eco-ager, I find fascinating as well, because as I mentioned earlier, my legacy project is about awareness in forests and trees. And this notion of eco-ager was brought to my attention by someone who is involved in eco-gerontology. And I thought, that's kind of an interesting term. And so this aging of elder, mentor, and eco-ager seemed to be something that seemed to appeal to me. And so I started to bring it forward. But to be able to do that, this sort of area, I also wanted to take a look at what it meant to look at the well living organization. And the being, because of that, is that some of the people that I'm meeting who are eco-agers, solo aging, elder mentors, some of them may start up organizations again. Some people might hang out the shingle and say, I'm a mentor, my lived experience. So if it's of value, you can certainly purchase some time from me. These are the statements that I'm hearing around me. And I thought, well, I've consulted around the world. I've worked in a lot of different industries. I've worked on $1 million projects. I've worked on small businesses. And I thought, well, why couldn't I bring the well living organization story to the foreground? It's something I wrote about back around 2007 when I published my first book called Creating the Well Living Workplace. But since then, I thought, well, instead of workplace, why not organization? And I find that term is of great use because it refers to two things. One is the legal entity called the organization, but organization also applies to the organization of work, the organization of the use of your resources, thus back to legacy, these useful whats. So it's the well-living use of the whats that you have, and you might find yourself creating the sense of projects and programs that you want to offer because of who you are, and or get involved in them. And so this notion of well-living organization, well, it sort of sits a little bit more out on the periphery of it. I still think there's some value to go over it. And there's lots of people who are sharing ideas around this well-living organization. They may not call it those terms. They still may be referring to organization culture, terms like that, management and leadership. But the well-living organization was the act of organizing, living well with one another, and to be able to bring that to the foreground. So I wanted to share with you 10 characteristics that have come to my attention, and it has come from very much more of an informal research style. These are things that I find that are of value when I'm sharing with people how they might organize their useful whats, and I thought that I would bring it out. And so I have another slide that I want to bring to your attention, and it's this one here, and this will be made available to be links to where it is if you wanted to go and download the image in and of itself. So that's possible for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to unpack each one, and I'm going to do it in a very brief way because I could create a video on each one. You never know, I might actually do that. So let's start with the lead from the vision. And the idea of vision here is sort of the what are my sights set on moving forward? There's this element of what am I working from and bringing that together. And I make a distinction here is that often the word mission is assigned to groups of persons called the organization. And then there is to and for the person, the purpose. And therefore, when you have this vision, it can be shared between, so that what you happen to do is you happen to bring the story of the vision and the mission and the purpose, and underpinned by the sense of the values that you're working from. Now, I also appreciate there's a lot of people who flip a lot of those terms around. This is just the way that I use it. And so I thought that I would share it in that connection. So it's very much about the vision, the mission, the purpose, the values that go with that. Now, the next thing I think that's important is leverage responsive listening. Now, the key here is listening is sometimes we listen to what we see and we pick up on body language, for example. And what I'm always alerting people to is that if you're going to lead from the vision, you also, yes, you're going to watch the persons who interact and how they create the groups and interact in groups, but you're also going to have to figure out how do I respond to what's taking place, which may be it may be in a normal conversation, it sort of flows back and forth. There's other times you may have to just take a little bit of a credibility pause and just go, hang on, what's the best way to respond to this? But one of the things I figured out very early on was when you listen, you learn, where you share, you educate. And therefore, listening is so important for your learning. And if you start going too quickly back into your response, you sometimes might miss some nuances. And this is just a way to remember is that to leverage those, right, is to take sort of a mechanical advantage leverage lever and to bring it forward in such a way is that you're thinking through what's going on rather than just sort of reacting to it at the time. You're actually, in the sense, creating an approach, creating a solution that's available. The next thing that I would encourage those of you who are listening in is to take a look at management. Management is the notion of managing the systems for persons. And what's happening there is that the systems you're trying to use is trying to figure out how to save yourself time, effort, money. Go back to the useful what's again. And the network is that each person that you're interacting with, in a sense, is like a node in a network. And how are all those nodes interacting? How are all those persons interacting? Then you could take it up another level and go, okay, well, this group, that team, committee, you could treat those all as nodes. Then you can go to divisions. Then you can go to, well, our organization and other organizations, which could be even contractors and vendors. There's lots of ways in which to take a look at the network that you're interacting with and be able to use this management is to create, to manage the systems for the persons. But I would put a bit of a caveat in there and just put the word safe in there. So manage the safe use of the systems. So the notion of managing safe systems, and that leads into lead from safer practices. And therefore, you can start to see is that if I'm going to do some responsive listening, I'm going to work with the network management and to be able to lead from vision, there's a really important element of safety that needs to be unpacked here. And that's a topic that I certainly will pick up on a video in the future. The next one is the recognition is that everyone brings their uniqueness to the safe work. So work being about discovering and shaping a way in which you can interact with other persons. And then you start to bring out other action verbs and outcomes that you would use. So things like, okay, well, I may have to define these terms or list these characteristics or use these tools. There are all these kind of statements that would come out, and each of us finds our own unique way in which to do some of that. Now, I appreciate in some organizations this notion of the safe work, actually you follow step by step exactly as it is. But there's a certain element of uniqueness to how you might do that. And it's also, there's the uniqueness when you find yourself, based on your lived experience, being able to bring that to the foreground. So there's a balancing off here depending on your level of lived experience and the type of job that you're doing. Maybe following a set, safe system is what's necessary. And in other places, there's a bit of a free rein that goes with it. So again, it's bringing your uniqueness into those settings. And what I also think about it here is that each one of us has our own way of living life and what we require and request of one another. And often that uniqueness comes back to something called the hierarchy of values that you have. And the more that you understand your own hierarchy of values and learn about it with others, that you can start to use this network management, responsive listening, and leading from vision. So I think you're starting to see how they entwine with one another as they unfold. The next one is to balance the person's producing and profit. Now, the word profit here that I'm using is in its widest sense. Is that, yes, you profit through something called money, and that's often how we speak about profit, but there's also the profiting from ideas, profiting from relationship. There's other ways in which to benefit from being in an organization, this act of organizing your useful what's, being with others who are doing something similar, and all of you working to be able to find this mission that works for you, but also fulfilling your purpose. So the producing component here is leaning more towards the person's, where what you're doing is you're accomplishing something and therefore you're producing it, where from a person point of view, you are performing it and you are getting achievement. That's one of the ways that I look at it. And they are mixing themselves together, and therefore each person, because of that uniqueness, is bringing their performance. And when you bring it together, you're producing, you start to see how valuable it is to understand, well, how does each person profit? How does a group profit from it? How does the organization profit from it? How does the society profit from it? So this notion of profitability can unfold in different ways for different persons. The next thing is to show ethical and supportive behavior. One of the things that I have learned again over the years is the ABCs: activities, behavior, consequences. So there's activities that you take up, there's behaviors that you exhibit that gives you the consequences that go with that. And what you're attempting to do is figure out, yes, I have to do what I have to do to be able to do the work that's assigned to me, but I also want to make sure that I'm supportive of other people. Remember this notion of safe work and network management. You want to bring that all to the foreground and be able to help others. And therefore, the ethics that you work from, there's 7 core ethics that you can use to guide your organizational work, the use of your time, effort, and money. And therefore, I will probably do an ethical decision-making course as well, similar to probably do something on responsive listening at some point in time and make those available for you. But let's take a look at one core element of ethics here, and it's around the notion of care. Now, often you hear careless, careful, and this notion of careful is take care of someone else at your expense, careless, take care of yourself at others' expenses. Well, that's not necessarily a supportive way in which to be with one another, as you are going to profit not only yourself, but collectively about what's unfolding, and therefore all the other things that unfold accordingly. And therefore, the word might be caring, which is the process of showing care, of kindness, the support that you can offer to one another. The next one is eco-create, learning, knowing, and sharing. You remember I point over, I have my eco-create, enviro-create table over here. It's a lot of places where I've got my learning. I got a lot of books, and I use those to create a lot of the different kinds of products and processes and projects that I work with. And therefore, my knowing comes from that learning I'm doing, so that I start to bring everything together so that I can make a decision about what is it that I'm going to share. So not everything I learn, I'm going to immediately take to sharing. I will take it through a filtering of knowing, so that I can sort of go, okay, I think that this would make the most sense to share it this way. This would make sense to share it that way. And that comes from my knowing. Often, when you don't have a lot of lived experience, sometimes what happens is that learning to sharing goes immediately. But with some knowing, you start to go, oh, hang on a minute, I may not share it that way, because I may not be being as supportive as I could be, because maybe it might be better for me to use more credibility pauses in my listening when I'm interacting with someone than it is to jump right back in. And that's that knowing. And one way to look at that is voice, authority, mastery, and position, to vamp it. And I have used that to my advantage many, many times. Is how do I want to use my voice? What's the authority position that I'm going to work with, the mastery that I can share? And that has helped me a couple of times to get out of some pickles, but also from a mentoring point of view, is to be able to really guide the person, support a person that's being supportive for them. The next thing is to ensure the contribution to society. I mentioned it, hinted at it from an organization point of view, but the society also profits from what the organization is doing, thus the groups, teams, and the persons that are in the organization, because they make up the society as well. And to ensure the contribution to society is to truly understand what it is that you are producing, the performance that you are sharing, and bringing this contribution. Now, if I link it back to legacy, and you're more about your own self and your own well-living organization, what's the contributions that you're making through your legacy? It could be something as simple as volunteering. It could be something a little bit more involved, all the way up to actually creating a movement. Mine, I mentioned already, is awareness and force, and publishing books associated with that, and using it for a fundraising and a fundraising reasons. So that's my legacy project, and that's my contribution to society. But I still need to work with this well-living organization, even if it's only by myself, because eventually I will start to hire team members in, and how would I use these characteristics will become important. The next thing is to take a look at the balancing of risk, fun, and the creative process. The creative process, creativity, innovation, great things to get involved with. Therefore, there's a creative process that you've got to tap into, and you got to find the fun of it, because sometimes you can slip into it just being serious and becoming a bit more of a routine, when there could be some fun that's associated with it. I think I mentioned earlier, if I remember correctly, I used the term simply serious fun. I believe that's important, is to bring the fun element out, but doing it from a position of understanding about the risk, because not everything that you organize from a well-living perspective, you're going to know. You don't have complete certainty on everything that you do. But at the same time, you don't want to be playing in the uncertainty, the ambiguity, finding yourself feeling confused. You want to move into, okay, there's risk here. How do I see that sort of adding up for myself? as I look towards this certainty. And what I do is I share with people is looking for clarity and confidence without wasting time, effort, and money. And that's the story that I bring to the foreground. And through my lived experience, I can share that, tapping into what the person is sharing, just as if I was doing my consulting work, tapping into what the group or the team, we can pull all that together to figure out what's the best way to move forward. So it's balancing up that risk, that fun, that creative process. The next is to share and service with others. So in my sharing that I do, I want to be in service with others, but not to the extent, as I mentioned earlier, being careless or careful. It's to actually be together so that what we're doing is we're in service with each other. And my thought line here, from a well living point of view, is living well together. So I have to understand what it means to be working between, and then how do we do the together so we can figure out the beyond. This is another way that I sort of unpack this well living organization point of view. And the notion of service is there because I want to figure out, not that I am going to be necessarily the steward of what's happening. I'm not going to be to the point that I'm just a server of. I want to figure out the service aspect, the interaction that takes place, the complementarity that's there and it's available to us. And that's something to stay alert to, is because I'll share from my own perspective. There's a couple of times in my life where I could probably look at myself and say I was a taker, is that I was interacting with some people and I maybe was taking a little bit more than I was giving back or serving. And I've lost some friendships because of that, and I wasn't paying attention. I've had to say goodbye to some people because they were doing it to me. And over time, I've started learning how to balance that up. And like the other one before, balance, risk, find, creative process, so I can be in service with others. So with these 10 characteristics that I've shared with you, they sort of are nested inside each other, but you could start with number 5, go to 3, come to 7. You could start at number 6, go to 1, go to 10. Again, there's lots of ways in which you can use this, but I just wanted to share this story with you of these 10 characteristics so that you can sort of figure out, well, what's going to be your next step. And therefore, this diagram, this image will be made available for you, and or places that you can go download it and grab a hold of it. But one of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention is that at wealthmovement.com, WELLTH movement.com /legacy-well-living-organization, you'll find some more information, and also on our blog as well. But Tuesdays is when I'm going to be loading up a little bit more information about these and asking questions about each. So you have an opportunity to chase those down. But these 10 characteristics and the 10 images that I will be working with this here will be posted on the Legacy Well Living Organization web page. So you'll be able to go to that at any point in time. It'll be one collective location for everything. It'll take me a few more Tuesdays to get to that point, but I will be adding them. So if you see this video ahead of time, each Tuesday, probably better to go Wednesday, go look at the page. You can pick up the insight if you're not finding them in the digital media world in the different channels that I have, and they're listed down below as well. So as I'm looking towards closing this off, one of the things that I would ask of you is to think about, okay, how might you step forward, how strive forward in ways that make the most sense to you? And that's where the YouTube channel, Wealth Learning TV, lots of videos up there that can be of assistance. I'll be shooting a lot more. There's a new channel on YouTube called Awarests, and it's to do with awareness and forest. And I shoot videos on that one on Saturdays if you want to pop over and look at that as a legacy project. But if the well living organization is really where you want to unpack, then the web page that's available, Legacy Well Living Organization with dashes in there, that's a great place to start. And um, the Wealth Learning TV is another place in which that you can go. Now, if mentoring is something of its interest to you, then go to mentorpractices.com. Learn all about the education certification that's available there. That was created with a co-founder, and we offer education and certification for those who want to go down that pathway of mentoring. And it's a good mix here, because one of the great characteristics, one of the great educating approaches that you can use in the Well Living organization is to serve as a mentor. It's a great way, because what people are doing, or what your mentee is doing, is tapping into your lived experience by asking you questions, and then you get into dialogue, collaborative conversations, and before you know it, you're sort of going back, sharing, figuring out different ideas, and then sometimes you as a mentor might actually be the mentee, and that's a wonderful way in which to move forward in your arrangement and relationship in mentoring. So that's also available to you as well. So with that, I think it's time to close up. And I wish you the best of all that's happening for you. Again, if I can be of any assistance, then subscribe. You'll get the different videos, comment and like this one. Use the different channels to send direct messages. I'll do what I can to assist you as we move forward. If there's some things I can answer quickly, I will do so. If it requires a little bit more time and effort, then we may take a look at a mentoring connection. But let's see what happens. Let's see what unfolds as we move forward. So with that, wishing you well, enjoy your legacy, whether you're in the organization or you might be getting involved or creating a new organization. These 10 characteristics can be of value to you. So with that, take care.